Welcome back to Rumble Right Dad, where we defend the traditional family. And today that took us all the way down to the depths of Hades itself, the Guardian. And we're going to look at this article from Moira Donegan. Watch this.
How you went into the maternity ward as a Simone de Beauvoir devotee, but what changed your attitude after that?
Well, it was just, I guess it was the process of pregnancy and birth and all of the changes you undergo through that experience. And I was just found myself really consumed by looking after this child.
The Guardian is afraid that the patriarchal family will come back and that women might actually be happy. And if they were truly a feminist trap, then they would be able to honor what at least some women say is better for them, or what some women say they would want. But in fact, it's not about feminism. It's not about what's possibly what women want the most. It's about what their political ideology wants the most, which is the current boss babe, everything's better if you just pursue a career versus pursuing a family. That's really what they're saying, is it's better for women to have a career than to have multiple children or to have a child at all. And that, to me, does not seem demonstrably true within the numbers of the way that women's mental health is. Conservative women were shown to be the happiest cohort among any population in America, because partially they have the blessing of being able to nurture children and be homemakers in many cases. Of course, The Guardian isn't exercising journalism at this point. They're exercising their moral panic in that they don't like the way the democracy ended up turning out in the last election. So therefore, it's time to throw all caution to the wind and just panic. And they're saying that conservatives see a world in which fewer women work and more women remain financially dependent on men as a world that is more moral and more orderly. I'll be clear, I don't want necessarily to entrench women in the home only if they would like to work, if there are other things. My wife has the blessing of being able to very frequently go out and pursue her interests in the evening as I come home and parent the children. And to me, that is a great blessing that I can give to her when possible, because she works so hard at raising the kids. And during the days when she's with the children, that's not, in fact, a trap. Like, being alongside of your children, she is still within her liberty to take those children wherever she wants to go. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to take 4 kids out of the house, but she has freedom that does not require her to go clock into an HR department and sit at a desk for 10 hours a day and then be barked at by some other person who's above them in the HR department or their college professorship or whatever it happens to be. Does that sound more liberated to you than having literally the entire day to do as you see fit? And then if you send your kids to a traditional school instead of homeschooling them, you'll have that time once they come of a certain age to be able to use for whatever you want as well.
About that childcare subsidy needs to be much more universal and opened up to, a variety of different care models. One being parental care, could be grandparent care, more informal care models that really build communities around mothers, but also send a message to parents that we really value your unpaid care contribution.
Moira Donegan in this piece says that the right has a clear political interest in discouraging women from working. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the political interest is, but to those who write for The Guardian, everything is about power and politics. And because they come from the oppressor-oppressed narrative, it's just simply that everything is building up to The Handmaid's Tale. And so we have to somehow frame it that this is a political power grab, that men want women to stay home. And honestly, they've built an economic structure so bad because of so many of the entitlements that have gone out for the last 20 years that honestly, it's almost impossible for both parents not to work. And that doesn't mean that I want women to be stuck at home. Like I said before, working hours opposite of the husband so that the children can be raised by the parents instead of a daycare system. That's great if it's possible. And if it's not possible, hopefully you can work it out so that you can maximize your time as a parent with your own children. That's really the bottom line. One of the biological parents with the children as much time as possible, if not both. That is the ideal we're shooting
for. A lot of difficult financial decisions to be able to afford to live on one income. And then we have policies like the recent paid parental leave changes that actually can withdraw support for single income families.
We want women to have the choice whether they work or not, and frankly, the choice whether they can have children or not, because the economic interests are in such a good place that they might be economically available to have a husband who could provide for them enough that they can raise a family, which, by the way, is probably less than you think it is. I don't make a ton of money. We're raising a family of 4. My wife essentially stays home with the children. It's not impossible. The modern left doesn't feel like that is a good choice, of course. They only celebrate one kind of woman, the corporate climbing, daycare dependent, government subsidized worker bee, because this isn't a project about women in their eyes. It's about political power, and they want everything sold out so that is the most possible.
And I will be the first person to say that we need to protect the option to be in paid work.
Moira says the state must be organized to get women back to work. The economy depends on it. First of all, I'm not sure when they stopped working, but if that were the case, that's her economic plan, and her motives for writing this article are right out there in the open. She just wants the state to take control and to be able to place women in the workforce, as if that is the fundamental apex of what it means to be a person, to be a woman, or to be a parent in general. That is ultimately, and quite frankly, the Trump administration's policies largely lift up the potential of having either parent be the stay-at-home parent, which I would die to be able to do, but I'm not sure if I would feel that I was doing my duty as a man if I allowed that to happen in my own household. But I don't begrudge any stay-at-home dads. If that's the role that their wife can still respect them, if they take on that role, then God bless them for that. And either one of the biological parents should be economically available to stay at home in a perfect world. Moira doesn't want that. She wants all worker bees in the workforce, and then we can all just want to go over to Canada so that we can get them to put us in a pill and turn the gas on as soon as possible. Moira says that Head Start and child care subsidies are framed by Republicans as anti-family. That's fake news. What we're framing as anti-family is a government that penalizes stay-at-home parents through the tax code, that devalues traditional roles, actively promotes ideological conformity to the left through federally funded programs, see USAID. We're not anti-family, we're anti-bureaucracy, and I want the liberty to choose what's best for my children, and then I don't want to have to pay for private school and public school simply because the public school is such a dumpster fire that they can't get anything right, and then they'll tell your child that they should be a certain way, and they'll take your rights away as a parent if you tell them that that's not the way that you want to raise them. The bottom line is the left mocks traditional values because they are afraid of their power. They sneer at value systems that allow women to stay home with their children because they know if given a choice, any mother would want that more. And so people like Moira Dunnigan and whatever her family structure looks like, I'm deeply sorry that she was raised in such a fashion that she must sneer so hardly and so widely at motherhood being done within the home in a traditional setting. They sneer at faith because they know that it was the foundation of not only this country, but most of the civilization that could even provide such programs that are given forth by the government today. Not that those programs are inherently good, but ultimately, we as a country are headed for an economic downturn, if not collapse, if we cannot get some of these programs under control. And if Republicans are attacking, Republicans pounce is always the story. If Republicans are attacking childcare, perhaps it's because they'd even just proposed a budget that's still over budget by trillions of dollars. And this is a Republican government, a Republican-run government. We must cut spending. I will not accept the gifts of today at the cost of my children's well-being tomorrow economically in this country. And if childcare is one of the things that perhaps, let's say just perhaps, some of those subsidies go to people who could afford it otherwise, or some of those subsidies go to people that could come into the home and raise their children and not really take an economic or complete grenade on their economics of the household. That is what we should support, because I will not take from my children's future in order to pay for me to have a more comfortable today. And if we don't get that right as a country, our kids will be the ones paying the cost. So Moira, nice try. Miss me with that. Republicans pounce, as always. But The Guardian, you wouldn't expect any less. God bless you guys. And if Rumble Right Dad has anything for you, I ask that you please like, share, and subscribe so that we can tell the truth about articles that are written by The Guardian. Not that hopefully anyone reads them anymore.